Hey there, and welcome to the Mugcast, a cozy listen to pair with your coffee. I'm Hannah, the writer behind hugin.amug and Hannah's Cafe on Medium, where I cover everything from music to psychology as a woman living abroad. Here on this podcast, I read some of my stories aloud with fresh reflections and insights along the way. So grab your mug, settle in, and let's get into today's piece. I am so excited to be back here recording, not just because I accidentally landed in a proper hotel room where I'm actually alone and I don't have to fret that somebody will enter the room. I'm sitting in Jeju Island and I'm so happy to be here. It's such a beautiful island. It's the last leg of my journey through South Korea, which I kickstarted in end of August, which is at this point 5 months ago. So I've spent the past 5 months in Korea. And during these 5 months, I dove into Gen Z jazz musicians. If you've ever read anything by me, you will know that I am a huge music lover and that jazz is one of my favorite domains. And I've always felt kind of alone as a young person loving jazz. Jazz is a very, sometimes people just put the wrong labels on jazz and they will make it this like alien category of music that it totally is not. So I'm so excited to be reading to you today an article that's called How Gen Z Puts the Third Z or Z, whatever you want to call it, in Jazz. Healing Trauma Through Music, the Rebirth of Jazz with Gen Z. And I'm reading this article specifically now because the Grammys are upcoming and the Grammys are coming up, makes more sense, sorry. And some of these artists are actually going to be there because they're nominated. So I'm looking forward to the event a lot, and that's why I'm going to read my thoughts about Gen Z jazz to you right now. As a Gen Z girl in love with the constant unpredictability of improvisations and the soul of blues, I have often felt very alone. A complete alien to a world of what seemed like elderly men and sassy queens from long ago decades, lifetimes, before I even saw the day of light. The light of day. Wow, I'm amazing today. I sat in jazz bars and felt almost as if I had to explain why I was there. And then I discovered Laufey many, many years ago. I fell in love with her softness and was pleasantly surprised one day when her song Falling Behind, which I already knew, was labeled a new jazz tune by my favorite performers in my bar. And on a lazy Saturday, in my favorite jazz hub in southern Taiwan, suddenly I was totally in on this new jazz. As I was hitting the ground hard and craved more alerting sounds and more deeper messaging, I discovered Raye. She truly is a force of nature with an affirming voice and a clear queen energy, and she sang about pain in a way that only somebody who has felt the same can do. And then, more recently, I guess, Olivia Dean dropped into my lap. What seemed out of nowhere. On a bus in Seoul between two coffees and 50 words in my head. The song Man I Need was gifted to me by the algorithm in just the right moment and compelled me to stop playing Sabrina Carpenter, which is certainly not an easy thing to do. At the time, for some background, that I discovered Olivia Dean's album, it had just come out. It wasn't such a coincidence, but like since the time difference between when the albums are dropped and when they like when I can see them is kind of a little bit off sometimes because I'm in South Korea and the albums are always dropped according to Western time zones. Sometimes I had her album saved, but I didn't know when it was going to drop. So I was literally on this bus and suddenly while I was already halfway through Man's Best Friend, um suddenly this new song from Olivia Dean started playing and I was like, "Oh, wait, the album is out." And I was so excited because I was again on the bus and Seoul bus rides tend to take a while. Um at least in my case. So I discovered her then and there, and I didn't stop listening to her, which is why when I now listen to her album from last autumn, The Art of Loving, I have all of these memories and pictures of Seoul and autumn in Seoul in my mind, which is so beautiful because autumn in Seoul is amazing. It's full of ginkgo leaves that are turning the whole like all of the streets yellow. And first of all, the trees start turning and you get these like different colors, and then added to the ginkgos you get some of the red colors as well that are dotting the streets. And then suddenly, somewhere around in the middle of November, the leaves start falling and the floor just turns into this carpet of yellow ginkgo leaves. And at the time, I was living quite near the palaces area in Seoul. So I had like a half an hour walk, I would say, to Anguk Station, maybe 20 minutes. And then obviously, Gyeongbokgung Palace isn't far from there. So I would, at that time, because the temperature was still nice, I would walk around the area and I would have her album in my ears, which is the reason why when I now listen to this, to the man I need, I feel really put back to this moment, and I can kind of see the ginkgo leaves and the people and the buses that are rushing by and the walls, um the palace walls. Is really amazing how, sometimes pop music is a bit too flashy and has a lot of emotional ties, and I feel like sometimes in pop music you can't really put yourself into another situation so easily, so peacefully. But what Olivia Dean's album really did for me, it was so peaceful and so beautiful to listen to, that it just functions as like a portal, like a peace portal, where I get to set back into this time and this day where I, maybe that day I wasn't feeling great initially, but when I put on the music and I started walking and I saw all the leaves and the beauty and calm of the music just opened me to the beauty of the moment, I couldn't help but enjoy it. And that's why I really enjoy jazz music, and specifically Olivia Dean's music in this case. But I'm also so excited for Raye's new album. Raye's gonna drop her new album on the 29th of March 2026, if I remember correctly. And this woman has kept us on her toes. On our toes, not on hers. On our toes. Because this album that she's been developing, the first album since My 21st Century Blues, which was a hit. It's a beautiful album. This new album, she's been teasing for a while, and her, I don't know if you know her, but if you know the story, basically she had a notebook where she wrote down all of the lyrics for her new album, and then the car that she kept the notebook in got stolen. Like, I'm talking the entire fucking car. And so for a while, all of that music was instantly gone. Well, somehow the car was returned to her, it turns out. And like, this is a huge cliffhanger that I'm cutting short now, but this has taken a year for us to discover. And so now we're finally getting the music, and I cannot wait. Obviously, Where's My Husband was a huge hit last autumn, and I so get it. It's part of my alarms in the morning. I try to not always play it because it's so good. I don't want to get like that alarm feeling tied into it. The bridge part of it is infamous and beautiful. And I think she also dropped one song that is highly underestimated, which is called Suzanne. Oh my goodness, Suzanne. Which I feel like is kind of her version of Valerie. I don't like to compare her to Amy Winehouse because I feel like everybody's doing that and nobody's giving her the freedom to just be Raye, which is amazing. Let that woman be herself, please. But it did kind of give that vibe, and it's such an underestimated song. Like, every time I hear it in a coffee shop, I'm like, these people don't know who's singing it, and they don't know how great this piece really is. It's not just background. But yeah, clearly I'm obsessed and so excited to finally hear Raye's new album. I mean, of course, I still love Olivia Dean's, but like, of course, what's right ahead of us is exciting. And I'm also excited about Laufey's album. I didn't mention her right now because her album is the one that has been out for the longest. But A Matter of Time is just beautiful, and there's so many nice songs on it. I love Sabotage. That one is insane. Highly recommend. And she's mixing, the beauty of these three girls is they have their very own taste in how they make their music, how they mix the jazz elements. Um And the funny thing is, they have to defend themselves for being jazz artists, which is kind of absurd. But yeah, so much for my little detour. Now I'm going to keep reading the article so as to not get derailed here. And so I said, in what feels like the best pull of recent discoveries in jazz, with which are all, surprise, surprise, audible pieces of art by people of my own generation, Gen Z. And that got me thinking, what makes Gen Z currently undig the jewels of jazz? How are we, a generation of people who are supposedly hurting, who are sometimes labeled as too soft, the ones who are right now creating such beautiful music? So here I am attempting to provide the answer to three questions. The first one is, what makes Gen Z jazz un- what makes Gen Z uniquely adapted to creating beautiful jazz? Second question, who are the driving forces behind Gen Z jazz? I love how that's a thing, Gen Z jazz. Why do we need jazz right now? For the first question, let's dive into some generational trauma. Life is truly a pressure cooker, I tell you. I am telling you. Last summer, I took my mother to a jazz bar for the first time in her life, which was a unique and paradoxical thing to do. Not because in my 20s, not only because I'm in my 20s and she's in her 50s, and thus one would assume she's seen and done more in life than I have, but because she paid for 10 years of piano lessons for me, where I learned to play jazz. So I kind of know a thing or two. She had always told me that she hated jazz, or at least didn't like it. When I sat on the piano, practicing bass lines, which is a very boring task to do and doesn't sound very nice, maybe, she closed the door to the living room. But when I practiced classics, the door stayed open. And so I instinctively knew that she didn't like my jazz playing, but I did like jazz. And so since my dad had no issues with it, I felt like I could practice my freedom of playing whatever I wanted. You know, as an Austrian girly, people oftentimes put the label on, like, they kind of transfer that label onto you that you have to play classics. And in a way, of course, I can, but that doesn't mean that I have to, right? And even as a very, very young kid, I liked jazz music a lot. I remember my first piano teacher, who was very much a classic woman. She once gave me a book to study boogie with, which was very interesting because as soon as I had a piano teacher who actually knew about jazz, he was like, "No, no, 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 you're not going to learn that stuff from a book. We don't learn improvisation through imitation. We don't, in a way, yes, maybe by playing like the improvisations of famous people, but that's not the goal." So yeah, as soon as I got to actual jazz lessons, I ditched that book completely, but and got into theory more. But not saying you don't need any books for jazz. That's not it, but different books. Anyway, so years later, my mom and I went to Prague on our very first multi-day mother-daughter trip. And this was a very clear sign of our healing relationship. And it suggested that And so I suggested that we could go to the famous bar Reduta in Prague, which is a very old jazz bar and has a long history throughout wars, the Cold War, and communism. And you know what? To my surprise, my mom said yes, and she would have never said yes when I was younger. To my continued surprise, she let me explain the roles of each instrument and the transitions between heads and B parts and solo improvisations. We even got to call and response and citations. So, to my absolute shock, she has mentioned this experience positively since then, and she never complained and never disregarded this music again without a plan. I think this change in my mother is not a singular incident, but rather a testament to our time and the growing popularity of jazz amongst the youth. As Gen Z grows into adults with actual opinions to voice, older generations are more open to learning from us. And trust me, we have been waiting for our turn for long enough. We, Gen Z, are often labeled as too soft or dreamy, but we have also proven that we are very driven and successful if we want to be. We've reached the point of our often dismissed teenage years where we can safely be taken. Oh, sorry. We've gone past the point of our teenage years and now we can safely be taken serious by the broader audience, despite our often criticized overemphasis on mental health. In my recent sociology class, my professor used the following words to describe the relationship between mental health and human excellence. He said that generally more stress leads to worse mental health, but that is not the whole story. Stress and mental health are actually in a relationship of a U curve to one another. A lot of stress makes you depressed, but just enough is actually good to keep you driven and thus hopefully accomplish more in life. These are the words of the best sociology professor ever. Thank you very much, Seoul, Korea, for that sociology class. So, in the original article, which you can reach via the link below, I actually drew an image of the relationship between mental health and stress. And in that image, I drew the U-shaped curve, or kind of, I guess, turned around U-shape, guess hill shape, I don't know, between mental health and stress. And basically, what I'm trying to show is that the post war generation, post World War II in Europe, they had high stress, thus low mental health. Boomers Gen X had lesser stress and thus better mental health. Millennials even were faced with less stress and better mental health. And Gen Z, my theory is Gen Z, we're now like at the very top of the curve where we have way less stress than the post World War II generations and we have very good mental health, but yet we have enough stress so as not to lose our drive. We don't know where it's going from here on out. So, my theory is that as the stress lowers, people are going to get less creative, less productive in the creative fields. So, my theory is that everyone post World War II in Europe, Asia, and the US had it fucking rough in some capacity or another. And it depends on your country and origin. That roughness might have been 70 years ago, like in Austria, maybe 50 years ago, like in Korea, or it could have been just 30 years ago, like in Taiwan. Such events in history, by such events I effectively mean wars, cause tremendous trauma that have to be processed by the humans for generations to come. So, my grandma had a history of fleeing across Europe to find an unstable sense of safety until she died of a stroke as a late symptom of her severe dementia. She was literally running away, even from her caretakers at the hospital. My mom processed this generational trauma that she was given from her mom in her own ways. She used her sense of motion and became the first woman in my village or neighborhood with a degree at university. She translated pain into action in a great effort to succeed, but was never able to grasp the root cause of her envy and the lack of fulfillment she does sometimes feel, which sometimes makes her angry. I saw my grandma running. I saw her running away from my caretakers. I heard the stories of how she'd been fleeing across Europe. And I perceived my mom as someone who couldn't take joy in simple board games as it was a goal-less thing to do, or also the goal-less improvisation of jazz. But instead of trying to reach even higher than my mother, I sensed that though I want to run like most of my ancestors did, I also want to process why we're running. And this is not because I'm more clever or more sensitive or some capacity better than my grandma or mother. Not at all. I simply have the gift of being given peace and time to process what the other ladies in my family couldn't. I'm given the benefit of this optimal balance between generational trauma to process and freedom of movement in peace to openly question the feelings without expecting immediate backlash. That, I think, is the secret sauce of Gen Z and music, in creative expression in general, but especially in jazz. We're the first generation with enough mental freedom to process our emotions, and even do so in public display, like in therapy or advising other people to go to therapy, in one of the most freest forms of music, jazz especially. A new Olympus on the horizon. Here's where we get into the artists. If you have not heard of Laufey, Raye, or Olivia Dean, you're not too late quite yet, but you're kind of late to the train at this point, guys. These three stars are on the rise now and have been causing some uproar in just the past months. Truthfully, each of these artists deserves their own articles written about them, and I hope I can deliver on this later, but here's a short summary. So, we're starting off with Raye, the oldest Gen Z on this list, who lands just on the mark between Gen Z and millennials and is a sensational artist and a vocal genius in one package. Her sound is reminiscent of Aretha Franklin with a pitchy Amy Winehouse feel and a history in club music. She's got a lot of music production experience under her belt. Hearing her explain how she makes her music is phenomenal. Yes, all of these old jewels can coexist in one person, but not without causing trouble. Raye has been making music for over a decade and has been under a record label for a long, long time as well, but experienced severe pressure, sexual abuse, and all the worst in the industry in the process. This is all pressure she could have been broken by, awarded by a frequent comparison to Amy Winehouse in specific. But instead of breaking, she honed her voice, being one of the most beloved vocal geniuses on jazz festival stages across the board, with her shoes taken off and her head so clearly lost in music that it is truly mesmerizing. Because the fact is, Raye didn't break. Instead, she literally changed the law for songwriting in the UK, wrote down her blunt and open experience with sexual assault in the song Ice Cream Man. If you haven't listened to the song Ice Cream Man yet, do yourself a favor and go right now. And she crafted her album My 21st Century Blues from all the feelings she had to deal with. Oh, and I mention that she wrote about body image issues in her song Body Dysmorphia, another banger. Environmental destruction and environmental anxiety. Tell me how many people have accomplished writing about environmental destruction on a hit album. I'll wait. She's also written about drug addiction in Mary Jane, which Mary Jane is one of my favorite songs from that album. She also mixed some Aretha style jazz into Worth It, which is a banger too, and the TikTok is sensation Escapism, which are all on the same freaking record. Yes, you missed something in the music world if you haven't listened to Raye yet. Lucky for you, her newest song, Where's My Husband, dropped just a little bit ago on the 19th of September, and it is an absolute bomb of a song. Pay attention to the bridge, especially, which is the ring bridge. It is just a gift from one woman to a confusing world of dating women on the other side. It is truly a delight, and we are soon to be expecting her new album on the 29th of March 2026. That's going to definitely contain just as many bangers of songs. And in the original article that you can access via the link below, you can click on the video for Raye's song, Where's My Husband, in case you haven't seen it, because if you haven't seen it, you better go right now. Now let's check out Laufey. In the article here at this point, I also have a video of Laufey performing her song Snow White at the Guggenheim Museum in New York. I really, really think that's worth a listen because the great thing about Laufey is her collaborations, especially with classical musicians and classic venues, are spot on. So moving to the second Gen Z with great influence on modern jazz, we have Laufey, and she's a must mention. Her sounds and songs fall on a completely different spectrum of jazz than those of Raye, and they tap into a pool of classical music and symphony. Not only is Laufey a talented songwriter and musician, but she also has a unique background that is almost unpresented in the music industry thus far. Her father is Icelandic, her mother Chinese, her grandparents were professors of classical music in Beijing, while she mostly grew up in Iceland and locates her roots there. But she often visits both China and the US. Being raised in classical tradition, she went to Juilliard School of Music and started promoting her own music online, especially during COVID, where instead of directly knocking on the doors of record labels, she found her audience herself through uploading her own songs on Spotify. She started off with very soft jazz and mellow sounds that were like almost bedroom pop for a very young audience. And now, with her newest album, A Matter of Time, she has truly shown her quality as a diverse musician and artist. In her previous album, Bewitched, she already departed from the bedroom pop label by adding songs like bossa nova singles, like from the start, next to classical piano like Nocturne and Dreamer with its 50s reminiscent swing feel, my goodness. A Matter of Time, which dropped in late August 2025, is fresh off the tape, more or less. And it takes this idea of crossing musical boundaries even a step further than she has before. It includes a song called Lover Girl, which is beautiful, a new bossa nova tune with an amazing rhythm, and an orchestra medley called Cuckoo Ballet, which I also love in the middle of the record. And there's the dystopian tune Sabotage, which might be my favorite. The meaning and storytelling in her songs just keeps improving from album to album, and Laufey presents herself as a multi talented performer, playing guitar, piano, and cello live on stage while singing. She also had a great tour through the US just in the last few months, and she also brought her sister on stage playing, I don't know, the viola or the violin. Um, Amazing shows. Amazing shows. Now you might be thinking this is too much. One human cannot play and understand the depth of both classical music and write jazz songs and sell them as new pop jazz. And you're right in the assumption, because in every freaking interview that Laufey is doing, she's asked to pin down her style, as she's criticized for not being pop enough or not being jazz enough for either category. And yet she stresses that she doesn't aim to fit any box, and that is precisely where her magic lies, in my opinion. It's so funny how so many people are scared of music that is innovative. It's actually funny. Okay, now that the sun is rising here in Jeju, we're getting to the third artist. Probably the most talked about recently, Olivia Dean. And if you click on the link to the Medium article, you will find the link to her music video for So Easy, which is probably my favorite song from that album. If Raye is Aretha Franklin and Laufey is Ella Fitzgerald, then Olivia Dean would be the Nina Simone of Gen Z. She just released her newest album, The Art of Loving, on the 25th of September, making it the hottest new talk of the town in genre-defying jazz made by Gen Z artists. GenZ Jazz is really a cool thing to say. I'm sorry. I'm enjoying this way too much. Olivia Dean has been flying under the radar for quite a while and only experienced one larger viral moment with her single Dive, which made it a TikTok sensation in the background of many reels internationally. She tends to lend her sound from soul and R&B, giving her music a very ambient feel, ready for a vibey coffee shop or a book retailer, which a lot of people in the Korean coffee shops are taking advantage of, but I get the feeling that they barely have an idea who they're playing. Unfortunately, I wish they did. In comparison to the other two ladies mentioned above, Laufey and Raye, Olivia Dean is still making her way up, but I would say right now she's already quite doing quite well, because at the time that I wrote this article, her album was completely new, and now we know she's been touring and doing stuff. So yeah, but she has been predicted to be an upcoming success online before. And I have to say, the new music confirms that suspicion. Olivia Dean has great storytelling qualities in songs like Lady Lady, which is also great, great tune, where she writes about a woman who guides her and yet changes uncontrollably, basically herself. A candid and beautiful reflection of the difficulty of life as a woman. In So Easy, she describes herself as the perfect mix of Saturday night and the rest of your life, which is probably my favorite sentence that anybody has ever written in song history. Okay, maybe that's a bit of like that's a bit too much, but I mean, let that sink in. I'm the perfect mix of Saturday night and the rest of your life. So well done. And she taps into this almost kinky lyricism that we already crave from Sabrina Carpenter, or that I crave deeply. Furthermore, the music video includes a very similar dance break to that of Tears in Sabrina's Man Child album. I couldn't help but notice. My favorite new song of hers besides So Easy is Man I Need, which is, by the way, R&B, which is perfect for sipping coffee, starting out staring out the window on a long train ride, or regaining feminine energy too. Yet her creative live film for Messy also never fails to move me deeply. Also, for inside the article, if there's anything on the Medium article that's linked below that is underlined, you can click that link as well and find those other music pieces. So if you want to be one of the first to enjoy that music sensation, probably now you're not about the first ones anymore, but I recommend you get on the train and yet experience what this artist has to share. Don't lose another second and treat your ears to some of the smooth and velvet melodies by Olivia Dean. Now, here's the final question and answer. Why do we need jazz right now? So, with these three amazing voices reiterating the art of jazz that has not received enough recognition since Nora Jones, which is a while ago, I want to leave you to explore the wild array of jazz tunes available right now. I love how the new generation is breaking genre barriers and attempting to reshape music to fit their unique background. These are all women from different walks of life, different cultural backgrounds, different continents of ancestry, literally, and different musical traditions meeting in the freest style of music. All of this makes me so hopeful for the future, for more equality across genders, races, and simply humans in music, like I've already previously mentioned in other articles. I think their presence in a time of polarizing opinions and political discourse is more pivotal than ever before. Not only are they young and bring the force and freshness of a new wave of music, but they do it in a form of music that is designed to allow every instrument and every player to shine in their improvisation. Jazz is the music of the heart and the moment, a product of emotions that can only be captured once in the very second that they happen. And thus, this music, and possibly more than any other type, points its finger at the fragility and the beauty of the present. I hope that these three artists, Laufey, Raye, and Olivia Dean, along with many new emerging voices in Gen Z, can help us protect our opinions and the openness towards opportunities that previous generations have fought for so hard. With something so beautiful and fleeting as jazz, not asking for directions, but just to be felt, I think that maybe, just maybe, we can save ourselves. And with this insane final note, I'm gonna leave this podcast episode. It is finally complete daylight here in Jeju Island. I haven't slept. It's 7:30, probably time for me to hit the hay. I'm so happy I could read this article now and review these artists. If you're interested, again, a lot of the links for the music are below in the article that I will link below, the Medium article that I wrote about this that I was just reading to you guys. I hope you enjoyed this, and thanks for granting me access to your ears on the Mugcast. You can read more of my writing on Medium under Hannah's Cafe or hugin.amug, or you can follow my Instagram on hugin.amug for cozy content and some updates. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow the podcast, share it with a fellow coffee lover, and let me know in the comments which article I should read next. I hope you have a nice cappuccino with this episode, and I'm sending a warm hug from my mug to yours. Hope to see you soon somewhere on Hannah's Cafe. Bye bye.